Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Hoss Talks Foss. I'm the Hoss, head of open source strategy here at Percona, Matt Yankovic. And today I'm joined by a longtime member of the MySQL community, someone that I used to work with years and years ago, and we've kept up over the years at various conferences and things when they were in person. Alex Kosminski. Alex, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm really excited to go to the conference, to see faces, to hang out at the bar, and I look forward to all amazing talks. I just checked out the schedule. The talks are really interesting, and I plan to attend a lot of them.
Yeah, there's so much content. It's going to be great. And we had so much content, we couldn't get it all in. So we're going to plan like a couple weeks later, a month later, some virtual days just so we could get people who couldn't make it because of, everything in the world, pandemic, wars, everything else going on. Not everyone could attend in person. So we wanted to give them the opportunity. So we're going to have a little bit of a follow-up as well. So there'll be even more content when all is said and done. So that should be good as well. Now, for those of you who don't know Alex, Alex is a staff MySQL SRE at Pinterest. Maybe, Alex, maybe give a little background on yourself to our listeners, just so they can get to know you a little bit more. Tell us a little bit about who you are and your background.
About the background, okay. I was one of the early days Percona employees. Well, not the very first one, but I joined in 2008, and that was a blessing. I'm thankful for such a great opportunity that I had a chance to learn from best, and I used that opportunity. And in Percona, I did data recovery services. I supported the data recovery toolkit. I was a consultant. I was a remote DBA. So we did a lot of great things at Percona. And then I started working for internet companies. I was in Dropbox, managing MySQL over there. Then it was Box, and then now I'm at Pinterest. So after Percona, I was mostly managing large fleets of MySQL servers. Dropbox and Box, it was on bare metal machines. Pinterest is AWS based, so it's kind of different environment, but still good old MySQL. It's been always a lot of MySQL instances, a lot of load, a lot of QPS, and our job, my and my colleagues, was to keep it up and running.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you have a variety of experience. At Percona, we tend to touch a lot of different environments, but post Percona, you have been in 3 very large environments that run MySQL at a significant scale, something that is quite impressive in terms of size-wise. Now, obviously, size is relative to where you are, but for most people, when we're talking about thousands of machines or even hundreds, that's not something that in the past has been standard. Now, we're seeing more and more people have more machines, but I think that's a trend that is starting. And so learning and being able to pick up the tips and tricks from someone who's been there and done that is often good. So I want to ask you, what are some of the common problems you see at scale now as you're supporting multiple databases, you're supporting multiple environments? What are some of those common things, maybe things that developers do that drive you nuts, or other things like that?
Yes, it is different. First of all, there is a lot of instances, and physically it's impossible to do manual work that you usually do if you manage couple, let's say 10 MySQL databases. When there are thousands of them, you have to script your work, you have to automate a lot of things. This becomes vitally important because teams are usually small, and number of MySQL databases per head is very high. So that's one thing. You have to automate a lot of things. The second thing is, because there are so many databases, unlikely events, they happen more often than usually, right? So
okay.
if there is a bug that manifests itself in very rare circumstances, managing that large fleet, you can be sure that you will hit it.
Well, that's not good, but yeah.
Well, that's life. What can you do? I remember there was a bug in InnoDB checksum when so the checksum value is 4 bytes, okay, and if the format was compressed, InnoDB considered zero value of the checksum as wrong value, and it crashed then. But we had so much data that zero checksums, well, first of all, it's a valid value, and when this valid value happened, instances crashed. And we had a lot of crashes because of that. So this is the moment when I realized how massive our fleet is, and how low probability bugs can be certain if you work in such a big environment.
Yeah, that's a really, I guess I haven't thought about that. If you have a 1 in 1,000 chance to hit a bug, and you're running 1,000 instances, you will hit it. You have the 1 in 1,000 chance. So that's that is an interesting and a little bit scary possibility, if you will. And so I'm guessing, from a Pinterest perspective, or even some of your Dropbox, the workloads are so diverse as well. Not all of the same clusters or the same machines are running the same workload. So that's going to increase the probability, if you will, of those bugs happening as well. Because if you have one application that's always running the same workload, if you don't hit the bugs, then that's great. But if you have analytics workload and OLTP workload and auditing workload and this workload, that's going to increase the probability as well.
Yep, and that's why if you manage again a big fleet of MySQL databases, you have to be able to quickly identify problems, and that's why you have to have some tools to help you that. So visibility is really important, and if somebody, if let's say developers complain about some problems with the database, you have to be able to quickly identify that. And we use some tools. I use PMM a lot to use it to identify problems with queries. And what I like about it is that it provides historical perspective. This is something that is not available in like normal slow log. That helps a lot. And again, if you manage a large fleet, you have to be well equipped to do so.
Indeed. And I think that finding that one problem in a large fleet is a challenge that everyone running at scale has. I think it also changes the types of things you think about from a monitoring or a alerting perspective, things that you key in on. you're going to be looking for certain patterns or changes in patterns that you might not look at if you're running a single or a few things at once. And I'm curious, are your developers kind of like is what you're supporting enabling developers to add their own databases, add their own systems? So it's almost like you're running a database as a service infrastructure for them. Is that how your the internals work, or does each group kind of get like servers you set up for them directly?
We strive towards that direction. We do want self provisioned database service. It's not. We are not there yet. There are things to improve, to introduce, but we are moving to that direction, and we kind of have to, because again, we cannot do all the work, and typical requests from developers are, well, first of all, they start service, right? So they need the database. So they need the database. They ask us to provision it. The very first step that we do is we try to automate or tool the process so we can do that quickly. The next stage is to provide some interface for developers so they can do it themselves. So when the database is up and running, what usually happens is schema changes, right? Because the data size grows and the simple alter table is not acceptable because it's blocking. Even if it's online DDL, there are problems with replication lag. So we have to do it. And again, if we do it manually, we have as much capacity. So we kind of have to introduce services that would allow our clients to do some of work. And that's essentially our work to enable our customers, to let them do what they want to achieve. And by the way, this is how DBA role transforms, right? So there are talks about DBA is dead, right? Like it's not that job anymore. And that's true because in our daily work, most of our time we spend programming. We write code, and this is probably 80% of our time. We only act as DBAs when you need to troubleshoot a query or you need to understand the bug, that kind of stuff. Otherwise, you write code. And we write code to automate things, to provide interfaces for clients and so on.
Yeah, and I've seen that as well. I think I just saw a survey that we were doing, and I think the results were 40% of people's time on average across everybody we surveyed is spent doing development type work. Now, which is, it's not as much as you, but that's across every, company, whether it's a web company with massive scale or small company. So there's just more development work happening. And I think the automation is required because users' demands are changing so much and they want it fast. They want it immediate. They don't want to have to wait for you or me to look into what's causing an issue or to set things up. So everything's just automated now. And I think that's going to be critical and important. And I know that's your talk at Percona Live as well is going to be talking about how you're deploying proxy SQL at scale. to help with some of that automation and to help with some of the infrastructure across all of these fleets and servers. And I know Pinterest has thousands of servers, so that should be a really interesting talk for those who are interested in how to deploy MySQL at scale and some of the tools that are out there that you can make use of.
Yep. We employ infrastructure as code principles. We do that to basically make it possible to make provisioning first of all easy to maintain. We do it to ensure uniform provisioning. When let's say you need to provision 10 identical instances, infrastructure as code enables to create identical all of them. And again, the law of big numbers kicks in here as well, because let's say you have a provisioning script or tool, and of course, as any other piece of software, it has some bugs, and in some unique edge cases, it will work wrong way. And when it happens, you need to make sure that those edge cases are caught. And if let's say 1 out of 10 instances didn't come up healthy, there are health checks that disable it, and it's reprovisioned again. So eventually you have what you requested. And we apply this principle, like infrastructure as code, on multiple layers of provisioning, starting from provisioning AWS resources like EC2 instances, load balancers, etc., towards operating system services, ProxySQL, operating system settings, and up to the fine-tuning of ProxySQL instance itself. So all of that is present as code in multiple repos, and we maintain that code, and we maintain automation that takes those pieces of code and makes things happen as we request that.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. So, I'm curious, as you're looking at the automation as code side, as you're looking at deploying these, are you deploying things via containers and Kubernetes, or are you using other infrastructure software or orchestration software, whether it's Ansible or Puppet or Chef?
We on different layers of provisioning, we use different tools. For AWS, we use Terraform.
Okay.
And so, short summary of my talk. 3 layers of provisioning. We start with AWS, that is Terraform. Then when EC2 instance starts, Puppet provisions OS level things like configuration, some repos config, some common services, Pinterest specific services, then ProxySQL itself, and provisioning software for ProxySQL services. So that's the second provisioning layer. I would say it's driven by Puppet. And the third layer of provisioning is more dynamic. It's a custom, our Python software that we wrote. It finalizes ProxySQL provisioning, and it also updates configuration as user requests, DBAs requested. So these tools, they work together Each of them have their own benefits and their own, scope of competence. So we organized our provisioning process to take benefits of each of the tools. We do not use containers. Frankly, working in AWS environment, I don't see much need for that, because AWS itself is agile. I mean, EC2 instances, if you think about it, they are not very much different from containers. You can start it, you can dispose it. So it works well for us.
Okay. Well, good. And I would encourage folks who want to get a bit deeper to attend your talk at Percona Live and get a bit more details. Now, one of the things you might not know about Alex, and he mentioned it earlier, is Alex, used to spend a lot of time doing data recoveries. Now, if you're not familiar with what a data recovery is, or forensic data recovery, for those who are out there, and you've ever dropped a table or maybe deleted some data or done something that you really didn't want to do with the database and couldn't recover from it, we used to spend quite a bit of time going back and figuring out how to recover it. And Alex was the master of data recovery. And I can tell you there were a lot of stories way back in the day, and I think things have gotten a little better over time, where we had to spend, days, weeks, weekends, trying to recover people's data from nothing, basically, or the bits that were kind of like, in the background there, and so that was kind of one of the areas that Alex really specialized in. He spent a lot of time doing that. It's a very unique skill set. I don't see it as often anymore. I mean, do you still hear people, having a need for that, or have we reached a point where things are a bit more resilient and able to overcome those types of issues?
Yeah, it was interesting work. I really enjoyed it. First of all, it's because you learn so much about the database. You learn so much about InnoDB internals. You understand how a server is designed, how data is organized, how data is manipulated, what happens when you drop table, what happens when you update table. And that was a great opportunity to learn those insights that you typically do not have a chance to deal with. Okay, and that is great, because understanding the basics helped me to do consulting work, helped me to optimize the queries. I remember, based on this knowledge, I created a talk about indexes, how they work, and I suggested listeners to think about it as you would write MySQL server yourself. How would you extract data if you had a secondary index? How would you design that secondary index to be able to do the search quickly? So that was a great experience. Another aspect of it was a customer relationship, because when people came to us at Percona, they were desperate. There is no backup, business at risk, database is down. For a lot of people, that was real tragedy, that was real drama. And I had to witness it. And when we started to examine what they had, like broken disk or empty database server, it was great to see how people had hope and how they were excited when we recovered the data. So that's also part of the work, and that is, to some degree, it's a pleasure to see that excitement in customers when they get their data back, when their business is saved. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that part of work.
Well, and it's a good experience because you mentioned the internals. I find that many developers, SREs, DBAs, DBREs, I mean, in the current generation, don't quite understand the internals. They might understand how to potentially do some light configuration or maybe do some query tuning. I know how to add an index, but they don't know how databases themselves work and how the internals are processing things. And I think that potentially limits the scalability and the performance and the security of the systems.
Yeah, it does. It does. What I see is, there are many advices in the internet. Like if you want your queries to be fast, create the index. And unfortunately, those advices do not explain why. And if you don't truly understand what happens when you create an index and how it happens, you are indeed limited in your ability to unlock the best from the database. And as opposite, if you understand what you can do, that creates a lot of space for imagination, and that helps with the service development as well, because you understand what the database is capable of, right? And it's not a black box anymore for you. So you can, and that of course impacts design decisions on the service itself. So it is important to know about internals to some degree, even for non-DBAs, even for database users, or in general for software developers.
Yeah, no, totally true. And so I like to do this at the end of my talks, and so I want to transition just a little bit, and I like to throw some random rapid fire questions at you. There, I have a list of questions. I randomly pick a few off the list just to get a little bit more interaction, a little bit more detail about you, and we'll see how it goes. I've been doing this the last few weeks, and I like it, so I think I'm going to keep doing it. I think you're like the fifth or sixth person. So here we go. Are you ready? All right, here we go. So, what is the most, in your opinion, the most underappreciated configuration variable in MySQL? Like what do people forget about? What should they know about? What do you think that would be?
Buffer pool size.
Buffer pool size. Okay. Hey, there is no right or wrong answer, right? This is just your opinion, right? So people don't set the InnoDB buffer pool. Of course, that's going to be a significant problem. So there is that. Now, moving on, what is your favorite tool that you use on a day-to-day basis?
Favorite tool that I use on day-to-day basis? Is programming language a tool?
Sure. There is no right or wrong answer.
Okay, then I would go with Python.
Although that takes the next question off my list, which was, what is your favorite programming language? But there is that. So you write a lot of Python code. Okay. Yeah, that's yeah. Okay. And so as you are thinking about high availability, okay, do you prefer using clusters that are already kind of pre-built, or do you prefer using standard replication with some sort of failover mechanism? like a PXE or an InnoDB cluster versus, a primary replica with Orchestrator, Proxy SQL, or something else doing the failover?
I prefer normal replication, legacy replication, asynchronous replication. There are many names for it. And the reason for that is because of its simplicity. It's really simple, it's rock solid, reliable. Yeah, it has its own problems, and ironically, in reliability itself. But over many years, we gained a lot of experience with it, and as a result, we have a lot of confidence in it. And over the years, those shortcomings of the standard replication, I would say there are workarounds, there are remediations like semi-sync replication and crash resiliency that, by the way, Percona designed. Did Percona design it, or was it with Facebook? I don't remember, but I remember this feature in Percona server, and I remember testing it with Vadim. So, long story short, replication is simple, quite reliable, and familiar for everybody. And I find it more convenient to work with.
Okay. Weirdest problem you've ever encountered? Like weirdest MySQL issue that just sticks out? Like, is there one that jumps to the top of your head?
Yeah, I remember we had a problem. We had a problem when primary key lookups suddenly became too slow. I mean, from normal expected 2 milliseconds, 2 milliseconds response time up to 30 milliseconds,
Wow, that's a pretty significant increase.
Yeah, and it was hard to catch bug, and we couldn't understand what was going on, and eventually we had to run. So we got a moment when two identical servers were executed. One was good, one was bad, and we ran GDB to catch stack trace and hunt down the bug that we found deep in InnoDB internals.
Oh wow! Okay, yeah.
That was interesting. That was interesting experience, and what I like about it the most is after a week of the struggle, we finally found the problem and fixed it. So
that's good. Well, and so that's one of those things that it's always, there's two things, right? It's good to find the problem, but it's also good to know that you're not going crazy, and that like it's not like, because sometimes you're like, oh my God, am I at fault? After a week, you're kind of like, did I do something wrong? But yeah, no, I get that. But Alex, I want to thank you for hanging out with me today. Thank you for sharing a little bit about your background, some of the things that you're doing at Pinterest, some of the history that we've shared together. I think this has been a great chat, and hope to have you on again sometime.
Thank you, Matt. It was a pleasure to see you again, and I hope to see you soon. Offline.
All right. Yeah, definitely. And for those who are watching this video, please feel free to subscribe to the channel, like it, give us a thumbs up, let us know if you want to hear from more people. Give us suggestions. We'd love to hear from you. And we all hope to see you at Percona Live. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Wow, what a great episode that was. We really appreciate you coming and checking it out. We hope that you love open source as much as we do. If you like this video, go ahead and subscribe to us on the YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And of course, tune in to next week's episode. We really appreciate you coming and talking open source with us.